Incorrect.
Hi, Bernie.
Hello, Harold. You're warmly dressed.
What was that? What'd you say?
You look like you're in cold climate. Yellow sweater.
Yeah, it's a little chilly. A little chilly in the house.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Steve. Hi, Mario.
Hi, Frankie.
No, thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Thank God, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Ready, or you only see?
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
We're in Perek Aleph, Megillas Esther. We're on Pasuk Yud Beis. We talked about the Mishteh that Achashverosh did, various parameters around that, and his demand that Vashti be brought unclothed. When it says Becheter Malchus, it can come with the crown, means only the crown and nothing else.
Wait a minute. We gotta finish the other one.
Again, we're on Pasuk Yud Beis, Perak Aleph. Vatima'en Malka Vashti. The Queen Vashti refused to come. Lavo bidvar hamelech asher biyad hasarisim, that the chamberlains had advised to bring her to the party. Vayitzofa melech ma'od, and the king was angry. V'chamaso barabo, and the anger burnt in him. Now, the Gemara Megillah says that she didn't refuse to come out of any modesty. She was involved in znus. We brought many sources for that. But Hashem caused her to have tsaras, leprosy, or whatever the skin illness tsaras is. It's not exactly leprosy, but the Meforshim say that the tsaras was a punishment for her haughty manner. And when Achashverosh sent for her, we discussed this last time, she was called Vashti Amalka. That, remember we went through it, he wasn't concerned about her yichus. She was just Vashti. But when she's described as refusing to come, she says Hamalka Vashti. She's the queen. That she wants to say that she was of royal blood even before her marriage, and that her dignity shouldn't be trifled with. Later on, we're going to see in a few psukim that Achashverosh sort of regrets and takes a step back and doesn't want to kill her. And then again, he calls her Malka Vashti, because again, he's making arguments that as a daughter of Nebuchadnezzar, or granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, daughter of Belshazzar, she should be spared. Now, the Melech got angry because Vashti had sent back a lot of belittling statements about Achashverosh, that he has no royalty, many different insults that the Gemara goes through, and that's what enraged him. Another medrash says that Gavriel came and put a tail on her as a nav. And when animals have a tail, it's to cover their private parts. And they were acting like animals without clothing. So she's worse than a behemoth. That's why Gavriel gave her a tail. The Gemara says, Melamid Shabbat Gavriel Vasala Zanav. By the way, the Meforshim bring the Kilas HaKodesh, which is a perush on Masechta Megillah. It says, Mitchila Nigzar L'Adam Li'ibari Im Zanav, K'mo Kol HaBalachayim. The human being initially was going to be created with a tail. But because of the covet, the dignity of a human being, he was born without it. But Vashti had gone around stripping the Jewish girls and made them and embarrassed them, and didn't care about their covet. So it's Mida Keneged Nida that the tail came back to her. So what were the insults? When it says, he bizta oto bidvarim koshim. Omer Rava Sholchale Barahuri Dabo. He was like the the keeper of the horses of my father. Or that Belshazzar, his father, could drink 1,000 against, could drink more alcohol than 1,000, and he gets drunk in 1 second. Again, it's foolishness that she acted this way. She should have sent a shaliach to say this is not the kovadik for me to come this way, and she would have been saved. Even though he might have been angry with her that she didn't listen to him. So her response is, it's all me'es Hashem, that she should get this punishment and eventually be evacuated from that position so that there would be room for Esther. Pasuk Yud Gimel. And by the way, anybody who wants to add anything, just please jump in.
So there was a negotiation, at least what I'm seeing in the Mayamlo is there was a negotiation back and forth. When she saw she wasn't getting what she demanded, she backed off a little bit. She says, "Can I come with a veil?" Then he said no. Because apparently it was more her refusal to do exactly as he was saying in front of all these deputies and people from all the 127 Medinot. So it was an embarrassment to him that it wouldn't allow him to soften his negotiating and agree to it.
Okay, I that's very, very pertinent. Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
the thing
Yes.
is,
Esti?
it says that he didn't like that she said that she comes from royalty and he doesn't, and that embarrassed him. That's why he became also very angry. She sent him shameful words. I don't know.
Right?
That's what we discussed.
Yeah.
Right?
Like the grass says.
Right? Okay. Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayomer HaMelech leChachamim Yodei Itim. He conferred with the experts who knew about the time. Ki chen dvar HaMelech lifnei kol Yodei dat vadin. He would turn to experts in law and judgment. Now, what is this business of calculating the leap years and fixing new moons? No, that's what the Gemara is in Megillah, but Ibn Ezra says that these are astrologers. And Achashverosh initially turned to the Jews, the Yodei Ha'itim, to pass sentence on the Queen Vashti. But the Chazal say if we condemn her to death, they'll suffer for it. Achashverosh is going to sober up. It's going to be told that it was the Jews that told him to kill, and then he's going to be upset. If we just advise clemency and to pardon her, then we are lacking in kavod and reverence for the king, because as Esther and Bernie said, she had belittled him. So they took a position of neutrality, and they gave an excuse. They said, from the day the temple was destroyed, and we were exiled from our land, we lost the power to rule on capital cases. We know the rule in halacha is when the Lishka Hagazis, which was Sanhedrin, was on the Beis Hamikdash, so then they had the ability to do executions, capital punishment. Once there was no Lishka Hagazis in the Beis Hamikdash, they had no power to do capital cases. So the Chazal said to him, better seek counsel with the Chachamim of Ammon and Moab. They dwell in their land and they deal with capital crimes. So the 7 officials were from the next pasuk, HaKarov Elav Karshnash Shesar Masar Tarshish Meres Marsna Memuchan Shivat Sarei Parasum Adai. The 7 officers, Roy Pnei HaMelech, who would have easy access to the king. Now, this Kichen Dvar HaMelech, a king doesn't have sole jurisdiction to kill somebody. He has to seek counsel from his judges and advisors. Now we're going to see that Haman changes that. So anyways, the Gemara Megillah Yud Beis says, Vayorma melech hachachamim man chachamim rabbanon. Yodei hayitim, sheyodei laber shanim, l'vua chadoshim. They know how to make leap years, how to, make a new month. And then we went through this whole Gemara. The other reason is Achashverosh understood that Vashti hates the Jews because she's the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar who destroyed Yerushalayim. So therefore, they might quickly done her to death because they want a revenge against her. Yes, Bernie.
No, just a comment that Memuchan is referring to Daniel, right? Memuchan really means prepared. He was prepared to suffer martyrdom and prepared to experience miracles.
Well, we're gonna get. I'm still back on Yud Gimel.
Oh, you didn't go
We're gonna
on
talk about who Memuchan is. It's a major
Yeah, I mean, the
focus.
other version is it's Haman, right?
It's Haman, and Bernie also said it's Daniel. We'll see. We'll see how he works out into Haman. But I'm still going through the previous pasuk. Again, I'm focusing on the words Yodei Ha'itim, the people who knew the dates and the times. Because remember, he did the Mishteh because he had calculated 70 years from the Golus of Yechoniah. And maybe I made a mistake. And maybe the fact that Vashti is refusing and all of this bizoyon that she's heaping on me, it's like a punishment on the fact that I brought the clay mikdash out.
But why was that so important to him?
What is?
Then what affected when they destroyed the temple and the 70 years? Why was it consequential to him?
Okay, so we've been through that there were 3 different 70-year periods because there were 3 different exiles. First Yehoiakim, then Yechoniah, then eventually Tzidkiyahu.
Mm-hmm.
These kings understood the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There had been histories, hundreds of years. They knew what the base of Mikdash was. They knew of the Nisim. They understood because Yirmiyah had said after 70 years, the Jewish people are going to be recalled by God and sent back to Israel. And there's going to be a redemption. So if the 70 years had gone by and nothing had happened, so they would be emboldened, they could do whatever they want. They wouldn't be fearful anymore. And that's why he made a big party, because according to his calculation, the 70 years after Yechoniah had gone by, nothing happened, nothing to worry about anymore. But we know the backstory that really the important 70-year thing is from Tzidkiyahu, which is going to be 11 years later. And that's Enochanami, when the son of Achashverosh and Esther, Daryavish, lets them rebuild the temple. Remember, we are now a few years, 3 or 4 years after Koresh allowed the Jewish people to go back. But then they stopped it. And the person who stopped it was Vashti, because she was not happy that they were rebuilding the temple that her grandfather had built, had destroyed.
May I just read a short paragraph about you mentioned Ammon and Moab as the wise people. The Jewish scholars were smart enough. Another explanation for why they said turn to your scholars in your kingdom from Ammon and Moab. The Jewish scholars had another motive, although they did not mention it openly. Achashverosh clearly had fallen into this quandary because of wine. Remember, the Suda was all about drinking excessive wine. Ammon and Moab had come into existence through wine. Lot had been plied with wine. He had slept with his daughters, fathering Ammon and Moab. Therefore, the Jewish scholars felt they would be best suited to judge an accusation that involved wine and drunkenness.
Very interesting. Very good. Very good. Okay. So what pasuk am I on? Yudala. That's the Karshna that Vakarov Elav Karshna Sheitar Masar Tarshish Meretz Marstam Muchan Shivat Sarei Paras Badai Roy Pnei HaMelech HaYishmi Shana B'Malchut. So normally Persian kings were inaccessible to the public, but these 7 advisors had constant accessibility, and therefore it's considered Roei Pnei HaMelech. Says the Gemara, the word Hakarov sounds like another word, korban. And Amar Rav Levi kol pasuk zel shum karbanot. Karshna, Amar malach hashlef nekadosh baruch hu ribono shalom klum ikriu v'necha karim b'nei shana. All of the 400 years that the Beis Hamikdash existed, they had offered karim. Karim are like sheep, a year-old sheep. Shesar, klum ikriu v'necha shtei torin, 2 birds. Admasa. Klum b'no l'fanecha mizbach adama. They built a mizbech of adama. Tarshish. Klum shimshul l'fanecha bevigdei kahuna. Because it says Tarshish shoam v'yashve. Meres. Klum mirsu b'dam l'fanecha. They poured blood. Marsna. Klum mirsu b'menachas l'fanecha. Mirsna is like from wheat. And memuchan kulam echinu shulchan l'fanecha. They prepared a shulchan, the shulchan atomim. So they see a remez that sort of the malachim are starting to defend Klal Yisrael because of their karvanos. And that's what Rashi says. Malach Asher says, "Kilu v'nei Kadosh Baruch Hu es hakorbanot shekriv Yisrael fanav lasos lem nekama b'Vashti," so that Hashem would take revenge against Vashti. The tavo Esther v'timlach tachtea. And the whole thing is because Achashverosh had stopped the building of the Beis Hamikdash and all of these korbanos through the Eitzah, through the advice of his wife Vashti. And the Malachim are saying, yeah, but they've offered all of these korbanos for many years. And the only reason they're not offering it now is because of Vashti the Rasha, who gave the advice to stop building it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should take revenge against her. The Maharsha explains further, brought up, and the Bnei Yissaschar brings him, that this is another reason why the Chachamim decided not to paskin regarding her death. Rather, they davened that the schus of these korbanos, that the Malka should have a mapola. And based on these names, which are all remuzim to the korbanos. I want to read a story about 100 years ago when Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was still alive. Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the Rav HaRosh of Yerushalayim when Rav Kook was in Haifa as the chief rabbi. And Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld and Rav Kook, you're talking about 1914, 1915, they went on a tshuva train together to the kibbutzim in the north. I think we talked about that when we talked about Rav Kook, to try to make them balei tshuva. And Rav Shimon Hershler, when he visited Eretz Yisrael with his Talmidim, he had a Seder with Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. The whole Seder, he didn't talk, he didn't give chidushim, he just sat with a holy picture on his face. He explained to the women and to his children the Haggadah in Yiddish, but without any big pilpulim. After the benching, when they got to Shvach HaMascha Lagoyin, and they went to open up the door, so Rav Yosef Chaim opened up the window in his house, which was right next to the old city, and he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he said, look Hashem, we have been mekayim the mitzvahs. We ate matzah, we ate moror. We spoke about Yetzias Mitzrayim. there are two mitzvahs we couldn't be Makayim, which was Akrovas Korban Pesach and eating the Korban Pesach. And that's because the Goyim destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. We can't bring the Korban Pesach today. So he davened that this is Shvach HaMaschal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should take revenge against the Goyim who destroyed our bias and prevents us from doing mitzvahs. So it's sort of a similar vein as to what we just read. Pasuk Tezvov. What is he asking them? Kedas malasos b'mal kavashti. He's now regretting. He's now going back. He's not that he would like actually someone to get him out of this jam so that they wouldn't kill her. And that's why Meforshim say she's called Malka Vashti again. But what should we do? Asher lo astas mamar melech Achashverosh b'Yadasarisim, who didn't listen to the command of Achashverosh to come before him. The Medrash Ponim Acherim note, here Achashverosh was very concerned that they should do something legally, kedas. But later on, Achashverosh condemns all of the Jewish people to destruction. Nobody was ever consulted. Vayomer Memuchan. So Memuchan speaks up. Lifnei HaMelech v'Hasarim. Lo HaMelech levato avta Vashti Malka. Vashti didn't just do a problem to the king. Ki al kol hasarim, v'al kol ha'amim, all the officers, all the people, asher b'chol medinos HaMelech Achashverosh. The Gemara in the Masechta Megillah says, who is Memuchan? That's Haman. And why is he called Memuchan? Because he is destined, he's Muchan for destruction. Rav Kahana says, a fool thrust himself to the forefront. Because you notice, Memuchan was mentioned last in the previous pasuk. And here he jumps up and he speaks first. Now, here if you look at the word, it's Mumchan. Mem Vav, Mem Chaf Nun. As the Baal Koira, I read it Memuchan. But the ksiv is Mumchan. From the word Mum Kain, there's a blemish here. And what was his blemish? He spoke out of turn. The Torah is not tolerant of Amei Haaretz that don't follow, etiquette. Muchan lePeronos, that's his name of Muchan. He was going to be hanged eventually. In the Tehillim, Ayelet HaShachar, it says, Mecherev Nafshi Miyad Kelev, which is the Roshei Tevos of Memuchan. And the Tehillim of Ayelet HaShachar is known all about Esther and Mordechai. Now, what Bernie was talking about, that's the Tosfos in Megillah. Yesh Midrash Shahaya Daniel. He was married to Sarit, who was older than him, and he could not force her to speak in his language. That's Daniel. So he asked Daniel, because Daniel had the same problem. He had a wife that didn't listen to him. And the Sefer Time of the Cross says Sarit was a Persian that converted to Judaism, and Daniel married her. Why? Remember, Daniel, they were called Sarisim, Saris. What is Saris? A eunuch, someone who was castrated. Now remember, we went through Daniel. There the Midrashim say he was unblemished. But according to the Pshat that he was a Saris, it's a ptsuadaka. That's my sefer, Kal Hashem. Lo yavo ptsuadaka b'Kal Hashem. You can't marry a Jewish woman. So that's why you have to marry a Persian woman. Now,
You're talking about Daniel.
Daniel. That's we said, according to the opinion, that it was Daniel. Why Daniel? Because Daniel had a wife that also didn't listen to him to speak Hebrew with him. So that's why Daniel was asked by Achashverosh, what should he do with his wife that doesn't listen to him? Now here's a very important yesod. Haman wants to now empower Achashverosh to make a gzeret that she should be killed. We just read that the normal process was the kings would not kill on their own accord. They would ask advice from their people. But Haman now wants to say, no, it's okay to do that. Because later on, he's going to show up and ask Achashverosh to give him permission to kill all of Klal Yisrael. But even more, later on, when Esther reveals to Achashverosh who Haman is, Achashverosh quickly says, hang Haman. And they hang him. Because now has been set a precedent that the king can order someone's death without going through the normal processes. I think it's an amazing shot. And the name Memuchan, he was making his own Puranos. That means the fact that Haman ends up getting hung on that gallows, he just set it up. So he prepared the way for his own downfall. And even though now Achashverosh, we see certain hints that he wanted to forgive Vashti, Haman said, you don't have the power to do it. He's embarrassed the whole people, and all of the wives are going to act against their husbands, so you should not let her off. Pasuk Yud Zayin. When word gets out about how the Malka Vashti was Mavaza Achashverosh and the other women hear about it, lahavzos ba'alehen be'einehen, to embarrass their husbands in front of their eyes. Be'amram hamelech Achashverosh, they will say, Achashverosh Omar said, la'avias Vashti ha'malka lefanav v'lo ba, demanded that Vashti present herself and she didn't show up. And Rashi says every woman will consider it as a license to act likewise to her own husband. So it'll be a bad influence on the other women. Other wives will be free to be disrespectful of their husbands.
You have a hard time convincing 21st century women about this.
And women were there when she belittled the king. And they will inform their husbands of the manner in which she deprecated her husband. And they will also poke fun at the king. The Rambam in Hilchos Ishus, I mean, it's 1,000 years since the Rambam. Not only that, the Rambam lived in an Arabic society, which was very patriarchal. Listen what the Rambam says in the Hilchos Ishus. Tzivu chachamim ala isha shetiyeh mechabedes es bala b'yoser midai. A wife is supposed to honor her husband greatly. V'yelo aliyah morah, there should be like fear in the house. V'ta'aseh kol maseh al piv. All of her actions should be done based on what the husband says. I'm just reading the Rambam. V'yeh beineh k'mosar o melech. A husband in the wife's eyes is supposed to be like a king. I'm just reading the Rambam word for word.
This is Persia. This is Persia and Babylonia.
Yes,
Now,
that's right, because he's in a Muslim country.
Yeah, Okay, so the Rambam absorbed this.
Mm-hmm.
However, he says, no, this is the Meforshim say. This is Rambam is it's miteva habriya. Shetova kodesh baruch cholish v'isha shebe'olam. That in general, there is a hierarchy in husbands and wives. And then the people in Achashverosh's time, they thought Achashverosh was a fool because they sent remember, we're going to talk soon about a letter that he sends liot kol ish sorer beveito, that every man should be the head of the household. Well, everybody knew that pshita. Every insect in the world knew that. So it further degraded Achashverosh's standing in the. Yud Ches. Bayom hazeh tomarna saros paros madai. The princesses of Persia and Media on this day, who will hasher shamu et dvar HaMelech, who have heard the words of the queen. L'chol sarei HaMelech uchdai b'zeh v'kotzav. They will cite it to all the king's officials, and there will be bizoyon, contempt, and wrath. So pasuk Yutes, Im al Melech Tov Yitzei Dvar Malchus Milfanav. An edict should go out. V'kasei v'dasei paras u'madai v'lo yavor. It should be written in the law books of Persian Mede that it not be revoked. That asher lo tavo Vashti lifnei Melech Achashverosh, that Vashti should never appear again before the king, which basically means he should be killed. Umalchuta yitena melech, and the queenship will be given liruta tova mimena, upon another, like her companion, who is better than her. And here is where Haman suggested that Achashverosh abolish the requirement that the king consult learned men for advice prior to making an important decision, because there had previously been this decision, and Haman felt it was not necessary for the king to discuss his judgment. And it was this is the Gra who all throughout his Perush shows us sort of the hand of God behind everything. This is, like we said before, Hashem giving sweeping powers to the king. So later he would be the direct instrument of Haman's death. Like it says, Vayomer Charvona, here is the Hinei Ha'etz, right? Here's the and we're going to talk about that tonight, hopefully, as well. The gallows that Haman built for Mordechai. And immediately Achashverosh says, hang him on it. This was all set up here. The king passed independent judgment upon Haman without questions asked.
So it's interesting, if I might intercede again. Haman actually had an underlying motive for making this suggestion to the Achashverosh. Haman was afraid that Vashti would get to the king and convince him to have mercy on her and pardon her. If this happened, he would have the queen as a lifelong enemy.
Why was she his enemy?
Because he's the one who suggested that she becomes subservient to him, and because she wasn't subservient, that she deserved to die. Then he also says, I advise you not to take a wife of royal blood. All your trouble came from because Vashti considered herself better than you. Marry a commoner and you will have no such troubles. Then it goes on to say, Haman would be undone by another irony as well. Vashti was killed for refusing to appear before the king in the nude. Esther would deserve the death penalty for appearing before the king without being summoned, but the king would pardon her. Esther would live, although she deserved to be killed. She would live to denounce Haman and see him die.
Why did she?
So it's
deserve
all
to be
irony.
killed?
Absolutely.
Why did she deserve to be killed?
Oh, because you can't appear, you have to wait for the king to ask you to come instead of you appearing on your own.
That was by
You
Esther
prayed
later
for
on.
3 days.
Yeah, that's
Mordecai
later
had-
on. No, Temmy's asked about it. Esther had to be killed because there was a threat that she would be killed because she went into Achashverosh without being summoned. But you're absolutely right. Haman was worried that Achashverosh might pardon Vashti. And Haman wouldn't want to face those consequences of a reinstated Vashti. So that's why he said it should be reevocable. And when he says never again be permitted, she deserved the death penalty. And Vashti did not appear because Rashi learns that refers to the past tense. Chazal say that her head was chopped off and brought on a platter in front of the king. We're going to get to that medrash soon. And Haman makes a kal v'chomer. He says the new wife is certainly going to be more obedient, noting what happened to Vashti, right? That the second choice would be, she would have to tread very carefully for what she does. The Medrash explains why did Haman want Vashti killed? There's 3 Amorim. Chad Amar, Ayadei Shahaisa Mistarta Bekortikon, Shalal al Panav Lakan Lakan. Vashti would slap Haman in the face with her shoe. Charina Amar Ayadei Shlo Izmina Es Ishta Lusudas Noshim. Haman is married to Zeresh, right? It's a social thing. Vashti didn't invite his wife to parties. And another pshat, Shahaita Lobas, Haman had a daughter. V'hayim avakesh l'asiyah l'malchut, wanted to have her a good marriage. And by getting rid of Vashti, it would be a way for his daughter to come in. So there are midrashim that explain all of that.
I said Macron learned that his wife learned to slap him around.
Right. Okay. Pasuk Chaf. V'nishma pidgam hamelech asher yaseh b'chol malchuto. When the king's decree which he shall proclaim shall be resounded throughout the kingdom, ki rabahi, even though the kingdom is great, the wives will again show respect to their husbands. Once they see the revenge taken against Vashti, and Achashverosh accepted this advice and had her killed. Now you can see, Bernie was talking about the irony. Hashem is weaving all of this. Achashverosh issues a decree to accommodate the wishes of even his lowest subjects, his husbands. But he didn't hesitate to make the outrageous and humiliating demand upon his own wife, his queen, daughter of royalty, to appear unclothed against her will. Now, this sort of foolishness resulted in her death. The Vilna Gaon says is paving the way for Esther. The Gross says Haman was shorter than his wife, and therefore the wife didn't honor him. So he's trying to improve his own situation at home. Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Vayitavad Avra b'nei Hamelech v'Asarim, vayas Hamelech kidvar mumuchan. The Medrash here says he gave the order and they brought in her head on a platter. Pasuk Chavbeis. Vayishlach Sfarim al kol medinot hamelech. They sent letters to all of the provinces. El medina umdina kichtava. Each province has his own script. Vel am va'am kilshono. Each people had his own language. Liot kol ish sorer beveito. Every man should rule in his own home. Umidaber kilshon hamo, and speak the language of his own people. So Achashverosh wrote this proclamation in all the various local scripts and languages. Now, a king usually commands his subjects to learn one official language. But Achashverosh went out of his way not to burden each province to give up its native tongue, which was a device to win the gratitude of his subjects and further consolidate his throne. In my studies of the Roman Empire did very much the same thing. Remember, the Jews got into a civil war against the Greeks. Why? The Greeks tried to Hellenize. The Greeks had this shita that they conquered. They would bring their culture to every little place. And the Greek language and etc. And therefore, for the Jewish people, that was difficult. So we have the whole story of Hanukkah. The Romans didn't do that. The Romans as long as you paid their taxes and you were subservient to them, they let you carry on whatever you were doing. And that's why it was very good for Jews under Roman rule. And the Beis Hamikdash flourished, and Judaism flourished. And we had some zealots, the Beryonim, who created the whole war against the Roman Empire. It really didn't have to be done. They were not, there was no idolatry being brought by the Romans at the time. It happened later, but not at the time before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, because Rome treated its subjects exactly like Achashverosh does here.
But here with Achashverosh, the Haman wanted this inserted because here Achashverosh was Persian, right? and Vashti was Babylonian descent. So they spoke different languages. So this is a specific reason. Even if you're marrying someone from a different culture, the wife has to be willing to accept the language of her husband.
Very good. There's another thing going on here, very relevant. Rava said, if it was not for this decree of Lios Kol Ish or Rebbe Veito, all of Klal Yisrael would have been destroyed by Haman. Not one person would have escaped. What's this? What does that mean? So, because they saw this decree, they saw how foolish the king was. And when later on they get another letter saying that on such and such date you can gather and kill out all the Jews, they thought that again the king had done this while drunk. He would change his mind. If it wasn't for that delay, they would have gotten up right away and killed out all the Jews. In fact, there was a delay because of this letter that they sent, which made Achashverosh look foolish, and they wouldn't have waited for the appointed date to exterminate the Jews. They would have done it right away. That's saying a lot of them Meforsh. Right? Omer Rava. This is Megillah Yud Beis. Ilmale igros arishonos. If it wasn't for this letter, lo nishtayir misoneim shel Yisrael sari pali. There wouldn't be one Jew left. And then we could go through what we just learned. Now, oh yes, I want to learn this. Very, very. This is based on the Gra. Later on, in Perek Vav, after Haman is told by Achashverosh discovers that Mordechai saved his life by revealing the plot against Achashverosh from Bigson Vaseresh. So what does Achashverosh do? He tells Haman to parade Mordechai around Shushan. Then it says, Vayashav Mordechai Shara Melech. Mordechai goes back to the gate. V'amanit chafel beso. Haman goes back to his home, Avel v'chafui rosh. They dumped garbage on him. Vaysaper Haman lezeresh ishto, and Haman tells his wife, L'chol avav, Eis kol asher, whatever happened here. Vayomru lo chachama v'zeresh. So the wise people around Haman and his wife told him, Im mizera hayudi Mordechai. If Mordechai is a Jew, asher achilot limpol fanav lo tuchalo kinapol tipol fanav. You're going to fall in front of him. You're not going to be able to hang him. You're going to fall. And then Odam medabrimi mo, while they're talking to him, v'sarisei melech higiu, vayavilu, and they quickly bring Haman to the Mishnah. So there was a whole debate here between the Chachamim and Zeresh and the wife and Haman. They told him, Achashverosh is now showing favor to Mordechai, to the point that you have to parade him around the city. There's a gallows that you built right before this perek. It says Haman built a gallows for Mordechai because whenever he would see Mordechai, he would get upset. So he built a gallows. Now his wife and the wise people around Haman say, you better get rid of that gallows because of Achashverosh seems to be turning in favor of Mordechai. Haman stays his ground. He says it's just a happenstance that that night the king couldn't fall asleep. But now he already paid Mordechai back. This is actually a good time to take revenge against him. And they argued against him that if it's only happenstance, but it looks like the mazel of the Jews are getting better. Maybe they did tshuva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes them again. So this is not the right time to hang Mordechai. You need to get rid of these gallows. And it looks like, says the Gra, that they came to a decision to get rid of the gallows. But they were still talking, Odam medabrimi mo. They were still debating. Quickly, the officers came and took Haman. Before they got the final decision to get rid of the gallows. So the gallows remained. And now when Esther has this little party with Haman, and Haman falls on her bed and says, and Charvona says, Gaminei ha'etz asher asah, here's the gallows. He pointed with the gallows, and the Melech says, hang him. So you see, Haman was negligent in, number one, building those gallows and leaving them there. So that's the shot of Lios Kol Isor Reber Veito. So the Zeresh, his wife, they told him to get rid of the gallows. And if it wasn't for this thing about the husband has to be in charge, Vashti would have taken down the gallows. But now, because you have this decree that the husband is in charge, the gallows stayed in place. So it's Muchanu Mezuman that Haman was hung there as well. By the way, this whole Kilshon Amo, that how did the nace of Mordechai happen? Because Mordechai overheard Bigson Vaseresh. They spoke Tursi. They didn't know that Mordechai knew 70 languages. Why? Because in every Sanhedrin, you needed 2 people at least that knew 70 languages. Why? Adim would come in to give testimony, and they might have come, Adim might have seen the new moon, but they don't know how to speak Hebrew. They speak a different language. So Sanhedrin had language specialists. So before this new decree of everyone is allowed to speak their native tongue, there was probably a prohibition to do it. You have to speak the Persian language. It's only because of this new decree that Bigson Vaseresh were speaking in their foreign language that Mordechai could overhear and reveal the truth to Achashverosh. So you see how every pasuk is connected here. The Medaber Kilshon Amo, and now everyone gets to speak their language, is part of the Nes. I was going to continue, but I think it's a good place to stop. Good place to stop the new Perek. Again,
Maybe that
I go slow because there's a lot to say on all this stuff.
maybe it worked in Esther's favor that she got her head cut off because he wasn't going to cut off another wife's head. So maybe that's why for Esther it was good. He wouldn't ask her to come in the nude, or he let her come into his quarters without being called because he was afraid to kill another wife. I'm not afraid, but no, you wouldn't kill another one so quickly.
I think it's a good Esti. He was pushed into this by Haman.
Right.
He's now regretting killing her. And we're going to see next Perek, he enunciates that, the regret. And so I think your point's very well taken. But the Meforshim learn it the other way, that the new wife, after the fear of what happened to Vashti, is certainly going to be more obsequious, what's the word? More
Careful.
yeah, in terms of how they're going to listen to the king in a much greater way than Vashti did.
On a superficial level. Okay.
Okay, Shkoya.
Right.
Ernie, you
Okay.
wanted to talk about switching the days. What did you?
Yes, so I
Yeah.
think we're going to next week.
Shabbos.
We're going to do Motzei Shabbos. The Navi is going to go back to Motzei Shabbos, 8 p.m. because the Daf Yomi is at 7, and we'll same thing. Instead
So
of
why are you
Sunday, we're doing
switching
Motzei.
it? Why are you
Sounds-
switching?
Because it sounds like most people want to do it like we did it. We've done it the last 7 years, Saturday night.
Right.
Just move it to Sunday when it becomes too late. Because people most usually they're not going to the movies Saturday, but Sunday night there's weddings, there's events. It may be more problematic at disrupting the Shia. Does everybody agree?
Yeah, it works for me. Yeah.
Bernie?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Mario's good. Johnny? Felice?
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, night.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Good night.
Gaia, thank you.